And it might be different. Everybody's bedroom is different. But it's coming up with, here's the order, here's the recipe, here's the expectations, here's when it's expected to be done by. You can do it your own way, but we want the room cleaned up, however that's defined, by this time on this day. Any sort of chores? We'll finish with this one just because it's more academic. Writing a paper. Now, you could personalize this, but spending time and effort brainstorming topics. After you have the topic, how do you gain content? What do you need to do to flesh that out? Organizing it once you have it. Write the opening paragraph. Writing the rest of the paper. Again, different sections. Sometimes there are metaphors, especially these days with students, like reframing it as, if this was a PowerPoint presentation, how would you present that paragraph? And that sort of serves as an outline. Some students will say, oh, outlines, I don't do them. But you frame it as a PowerPoint presentation, they may go, I'd make this point, this point, this point. Great, that's a paragraph. Can you write it out? I'm going to skip that. Studying for a test, planning out when your tests are, and planning the study 5 to 7 days before the test. And what sort of preparations do you need to use for this particular test? Again, this is a menu. I need that one, that one, that one, and that one. How and when are you going to do it? Again, there might be a lot of collaboration. For younger students, it may be a parent sitting with the student for a while to get them started. For a teenager, you might step back and check in every couple of days. But again, personalizing it, but having the menu so that the student doesn't have to come up with them out of the thin air. And there's a more specific target. With each of these, it's still an implementation problem. I know I was supposed to be studying, but I got distracted, but then that becomes its own issue, in which I'm sure we'll cover throughout the rest of the conference. We've talked about emotions, but even with impulsivity, acting without thinking, and there can be the thought that, well, it's impulsivity, acting without thinking, there's nothing I can do about it, but you can start to identify what situations are you more at risk for this. Is it when you're tired? Is it when it's your brother? How can you tell internally? What are your signals that you're starting to get upset? This sort of self-awareness, going back to the pictures, how are you feeling today? There are different ways to come up with plans for some specific situations. All right, when you're tired, after dinner, whatever, you can focus on a specific starting point that's the higher risk time, so the student can start to develop skills, then it can get generalized to other times. So I know executive functions, it covers virtually our whole day in some ways, so in that way it can be overwhelming. But by starting to pick out these smaller individual settings and situations and starting with those, getting up in the morning, switching between recess and art class or whatever the case may be, one, you're giving the student realistic plans and expectations and targets. As stakeholders, therapists, educators, parents, we're also giving ourselves targets to work on and see successes in our children and our students. And also from being helpers, we need that positive reinforcement too. Not that it's necessarily our responsibility, but if we can see these things working and the student getting it and catching them doing it on their own, that's when, one, they're starting to do it at an age-appropriate level, and it's one of these skills that will stay with them. You'll need reminders, but it's something that'll get them headed in the right way. So, end of a long day, you made it. Go home and replenish. Have a glucose-rich drink, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Thank you very much.